And we're live.
We're live. All right.
What up, everybody?
What up? Coming soon, Disney renews Chapeks contract for another 3 years, and we're going to chat about Netflix's gaming strategy. Coming to you now.
Stay tuned. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Entertainment Business Review. I'm Jordan.
I'm Brian, and this is episode 16 of the EBR.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, this recent news, fresh off of Disney's ousting of their content chief. Chapek has his contract renewed for another 3 years, which I think is a relative surprise to the industry.
I mean, it was a relative surprise for us because I remember talking about how he should be careful.
Two days ago, we literally said, it doesn't look too good for him. He should be like walking on thin ice right now.
Yeah.
But lo and behold, the board renews his contract for another 3 years, which is actually a decent long-term stint for a CEO these days, right? Especially in the entertainment industry.
Definitely. I mean, I think it's good. I mean, they are providing stability within Disney, so there's that, I guess. But
yeah, I mean, a lot of people are a little bit surprised. I think the board also backed him up fully. Susan Arnold, who was recently brought on, I think last year, was very much on his side. Just like, hey, we believe in him. Everything he does, we're on board with. So I think at least they have that unified front, which is probably pretty helpful for investors. But I think it's a good time to kind of revisit the comparison of Chapek with Jason Kilar as the CEO of Warner, just because they're both kind of similar, because they're pandemic era CEOs. They're both brought on during a relative time of distress. They had a very kind of no-nonsense numbers approach to things, which I thought is a refreshing change. And then they pissed off a lot of people over the last couple of years, right? So Jason Kilar with Project Popcorn, putting everything day on date. And then now Iger with the number of stumbles that he's made to just
Chapek,
Sorry, Chapek.
Bob 2. Don't ever.
Did I say Iger?
Yeah, you said Iger.
Oh.
Don't ever insult Iger.
Yeah. Can't be doing that. But I mean, he's made several stumbles. And I think their treatment of these two CEOs, and you tell me what you think as well, but I think their treatment is very, very different, because one is kind of an entertainment homegrown guy, Chapek, and the other is kind of a tech. Because Kyla grew up through Hulu and
you started Hulu
media space, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they very different backgrounds. And then now 2 years post COVID, we have one who was fired maybe a year into his job, and the other who was was extended another 3 years. Right. So I mean, I guess my question is, like, which one do you think is the better CEO, especially from a performance perspective, and do you think the treatment and the send off is kind of fair in this instance? Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't think it's fair. I would say I think the first is, I think it's interesting because they have their backgrounds are both not in entertainment really, but they're also, I mean, they are, but it's like in a different part of the entertainment than it traditionally is. So like Iger was a very traditional, and a lot of CEOs of these companies were very like traditional, like entertainment people, like probably starting from programming, have a good relationship with the talent. Yeah, like that's kind of people. Right, content people. And now you have two people, Kilar and Chapek, who both were in the entertainment industry, but they weren't like content programming people. Kilar was more of a tech guy, and Chapek was more of like an operations amusement park guy. Yeah. So it's interesting, like they're both kind of viewed, they're like insiders, but they're not really, like they're kind of outsiders. Yeah. So it's interesting how they approach it, and they both handled. And this goes to like why Hollywood was always, that the CEOs were always content people, was because the talent and the content is the most important part of the business, obviously. And they both fucked that up with the Scarlett Johansson thing, and then how he's dealt with the Florida thing, and then with Kilar with Project Popcorn, where he just didn't tell. They lost Christopher Nolan. They lost one of the best directors ever.
because he just didn't communicate well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's an
EQ element here that they both lack, I guess.
Yes, there's definitely an EQ level, but I will give Kilar credit in that he's taken shots, like big shots, versus I think Chapek's kind of, I don't know. He's taken shots in terms of like changing the culture, I think, to what he wants, but in terms of like a company strategy, he's kind of just stuck to whatever Iger was doing,
right?
Which,
He's
some of that was good,
shepherd.
some of that was bad.
Yeah, he's more of a shepherd of the strategy.
Yes.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think from a performance perspective, too, they both were relatively successful. So Chapek had to take it from the pandemic, and he was able to keep the ship going, and then now even the parks have come back, right? So from a performance perspective and growing Disney Plus, he's done relatively well. And then from Kyler's perspective, his main goal was to push Warner into streaming, right? And that's what he did, and they've actually been killing it, right?
Yeah, they have.
So both have been relatively successful for the mission that they took on,
right?
Except one is now being completely ejected.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that Kilar was the one who was ejected and Chapek was not, because I think HBO is more on the right track than I think Disney is.
Yeah, agreed.
To be honest. So it's interesting why, like, I don't think, from a content perspective, I think they've been mediocre at best, and Disney Plus as a service, like, maybe it has a lot of subscribers, but I can't imagine people are on it. Like, it's definitely not people's go-to streaming platform,
right?
So they're really relying on their platform and, frankly, their existing IP, which is gonna die eventually. Like, I think people are really getting Star Wars fatigue, especially after Obi-Wan, and then even like Toy Story. Yeah, even Lightyear didn't do well. So I think people are starting to be like, okay, we're like, you're really soaking these franchises as much as we can. And the problem is that Disney, like, they have a Star Wars button. They can't just like give up on making Star Wars content anymore. Yeah. So like they have to keep pushing it out, and everyone's like, dude, we're done. Yeah, Star Wars is done. Please stop. I make new stuff.
It's become so obvious that they're trying to get new audiences, so they're just kind of like wringing that towel for every last drop.
Right.
It becomes more and more apparent as the older crowd actually like grow out of it and realize how different it's become.
And on the flip side, HBO Max, like, they're making good stuff. Like, they're making solid shows, fresh shows, new concepts. I'm going in and looking to see what they have available. It's a very different strategy. So it's interesting. But to be fair, like, I think if the whole merger with WarnerMedia didn't happen, like, I think Kilar probably would have stayed. Like, I think from a performance standpoint, they wouldn't have fired him. It was purely because Zaslav wanted to get his own people in there, which is fair enough.
Yep.
So I think Kilar just kind of got screwed by forces he couldn't control. Really, it wasn't really a performance thing. I don't think we know actually where he's going to end. I don't think he's decided where he's going to end up. He's probably taking the summer.
Not that I'm. Yeah, dude, he's
got to chill.
Probably a golden parachute. So he's
he has plenty of money. He could just chill and do nothing for the rest of his life. I'm sure he's not going to do that.
What's the next challenge for him, really? But
I don't know. Maybe Roku.
maybe. I always thought, because the number 2 is like or has left, so there's an open spot there. But it's a tough question, but interesting treatment. All right, so moving on, our second topic.
Yes. So something that I wanted to talk about, because recently it's come out that Netflix's churn is going up. Particularly, I mean, obviously we knew it had to have gone up because they're projecting negative 2 million subscriber loss in the next quarter.
It's worth saying that their churn is lowest in the industry right now. Or has been.
So it has been normally. It has been, but I saw a recent statistic that the statistic was the share of subscribers that cancel within the first month for Netflix was always pretty low compared to the other services, but it's skyrocketed in the last few months. So it's people subscribing and then within a few months canceling. I mean, that could be because of Stranger Things, frankly. I think people probably just signed up for Stranger Things, got it and dipped. And then maybe they're going to subscribe again when the last 2 seasons come out, and then they'll cancel. I think churn, like, generally I think consumers now, they have so many options, I think they're more akin to canceling and resubscribing now.
I think recently a lot of their stuff has been event driven too. Like, I was looking at their top 10 list recently, and it's all stuff that came out like 2 weeks prior, like their top 10 stuff. So you see a lot of things driven by event type of releases.
Right. And so Netflix's argument would be that if we keep having events, then there's, people are basically going to stay subscribed because they're waiting for the events.
Right.
And that's fair. It's just, it's starting to become not people's go-to streaming platform anymore. It's starting to become Apple or HBO Max, which is definitely a problem for Netflix. I don't know how do they solve that. I don't know. I mean, they've got to focus less on quantity than quality. And we'll see what happens when they go into an AVOD tier, which they're currently working on now, and maybe that reduces churn. But I did want to talk about, Yeah,
I was going to say, so if they are implementing an AVOD, churn becomes one of many other metrics that they're now going to start looking at, right? Because churn is specifically for, there's two kinds of churn, right? Paid churn, and then there's just like people who churn out by not looking at stuff if it's an AVOD service. So you're also looking at like how many people are engaging and for how long.
Would that be dependent on if the AVOD strategy was like actually free? Because I don't know if is it a pure AVOD strategy they're going with?
They don't know yet. They don't know
okay.
Yet. Yeah, it's still up in the air.
So you're right. I don't know if they'll ever go with a completely free AVOD service. I can't imagine Netflix doing that. It's possible, but like if they're charging $17 for the subscription and they're going to free with ads, they either need to charge an insane amount because the idea is basically like they don't want to create AVOD and then bring down their overall company ARPU, right? Because they basically want the AVOD tier to be on the same price ARPU as the subscription service, essentially. So I'm paying less, so you're getting less money from the subscriber, but you're making money off of ads to make up for that. So I can't imagine they go totally free because the ARPU on that is going to be way lower. So they'll overall kill their business. I have a feeling it'll be like $7, plus ads.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
The other thing to see is like how much are they going to like lose from cannibalization versus now they're tapping into like those fringe audiences that thought Netflix is too expensive. Like,
right.
How much does that overlap?
Right.
Or how much does it make them net positive or negative?
Yeah. And so I think that's what they're trying to do is they know that they're going to get probably additional subscribers by going to AVOD. But they will definitely lose money because they're going to be the ARPU on SVOD is always going to be higher most of the time. I mean, WarnerMedia claims that that's not the case, or like maybe it was Discovery that they were referring to. But I think Zaslav came out and said that AVOD makes just as much, if not more, than SVOD, which is surprising. Maybe it's possible.
It is a big business because the more you keep someone on, like it's actually pretty profitable. Like the ARPU for some other AVOD platforms.
Yeah.
Of which I won't speak. Like per month, you could go anywhere from like 20 to 70 per user.
$70 per user?
Yeah.
Interesting. So I mean, I guess it depends how long they're on, right?
And there's also super users, right? Guys that leave their stuff on for like 8 hours a day. Just run through several ads all the time.
Right.
So there's a lot more variation for sure.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I mean, I think that will help for sure. But one strategy I wanted to look at specifically was their games. Because that was, I think, a big surprise to most people in the industry. First of all, it was the first ever time we kind of saw a divergence of strategy at all from Netflix. They've been purely like movies and TV for this price, for a single price,
Subscription, binge, buffet model.
Right, exactly. And so when they went into the gaming strategy, I think that was met with, a combination of people being like, oh, that's an interesting strategy. Maybe that's an interesting strategy. I'm glad that they're being flexible. And then other people like me that thought this is stupid. This is a complete waste of time I don't know. I can't see the internal data, but the fact is, and I'd love to see in the comments, people actually saying, oh yeah, I play the games, but I know nobody. I know absolutely nobody.
Do you know which games they have?
No.
From the IP?
No, I don't even think they're advertising this.
And
that's another thing. They're not even advertising it. So we'll start from the beginning in terms of, while you look that up, what the strategy that Netflix had was, which is essentially to give everybody clarity who doesn't know about this, because it would make a lot of sense that you don't, is that the idea is basically if they offer mobile games for free with a subscription, then that means that I doubt their methodology was that it would actually get subscribers, because there's no way someone's signing up for Netflix to play games. But they probably thought that it was a value add in terms of it might reduce churn, because people might be like, okay, like I'm not a huge fan of the content, but there's a game or two that I really like. And they probably thought that like if people play like a Stranger Things game, maybe that means they'll watch Stranger Things. Like maybe there's kind of a cycle there. I kind of get that latter strategy, maybe a little bit, but I don't believe that I think people see Netflix and they value it in terms of its content. I don't think they care about the games. I think that's like, oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
But I don't think they value Netflix based off of its game. They might improve their affinity towards an IP because they're playing the game at the same time. But they're definitely not like thinking, oh, Netflix could jump up their price by $3 because they have these games, or if the content is bad, well, the games are good, so I'm going to unsubscribe. I think that's
at this
not
list,
true.
Right? So I'm looking at this list. It says every Netflix game ranked, and there's 22 of them. As I'm looking at this list, the only IP that they've used to convert into a game seems to be Stranger Things.
I think they did Arcane too, actually.
Yeah, there might be an Arcane. So it's called Arcanium: Rise of Akan or something like that.
Yeah.
So not too many that uses existing IP, but a number of these are like those little kind of like one-shot kind of games, like shooting hoops, exploding kittens.
The Exploding Kittens one is actually interesting because that is based off of a really popular board game, and it might be good from like a talent perspective.
Yeah. I get that one.
Yeah.
The point I was trying to make here is that like these are like small time games.
Yeah, they're very small games.
Yeah, you know what it reminds me of? Remember how when we used to have like Nintendo DS or like Game Boys, and they used to have those one cartridges that had like 20 different mini games?
Oh yes, that's exactly what this is.
Yeah, that's what it seems like.
Yes.
But it's not necessarily keeping me on Netflix for this.
It feels like more like when you buy the DS and they give you a free game to just like play with it, but you don't actually play that game that much. You just like it's just like so you have something to play when you first buy it, and then you have to buy other games.
Yeah, I wonder how, like what the engagement on this is for younger audiences.
So
because that's why they're doing this, right?
Yeah, so I'd be curious, honestly, into the statistics of like, well, first of all, how do you value this? Because it's not making you money. So you have to make some assumptions on the value that it's doing, which means like, okay, does that mean you attribute a certain percent, like, if you look at total engagement, like if you look at all the subscribers and they're all paying, like this is the ARPU of all subscribers, and then this percentage of the subscribers are playing games, do you attribute that value? It's like, it's hard to, that's the eternal problem with all these streaming platforms is like, the content on their streaming platform individually doesn't make them money. It's the overall portfolio that keeps people subscribed that makes them money. So you can't really say that like this game is bringing in this exact amount of revenue because it doesn't.
They have their economic value metric, however they measure it. But I would imagine that they're taking a look at groups of people that play the game and then stay on the platform, or those who play the game or don't play the game and then churn, and seeing if there's a difference in these cohorts.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, maybe
so
they're comparing
they would
that.
Look at those cohorts and see how much they like saved in economic value.
But they would have had to make an assumption before, which based on no data, because no one's doing it.
Yeah.
So I'd be curious if they had to make some assumptions. I'm curious if it's working out. I would argue no. I can't imagine. And also, their recent projections are pretty bad. So are they saying, if they say the gaming is a success, are they saying that it would have been worse without the game, so they would have lost 4 million subscribers in Q2? That's already insane. So it's either not working or it's working, and Netflix is in even a worse position than we thought.
Yeah, I mean, 2 other points is they don't talk about it ever, so we don't know how it's doing, and they're not saying one way or another if they're doubling down or pulling back,
which is a surefire way of saying it's not going well. Right. If it was going well, why would they not announce that? Lines. Yeah.
And then the other thing is with the decrease in value of Netflix recently, is that capturing the fact that they've now entered into multiple different business models too? Is that even worse now?
Right. I don't know. It's really hard to determine what is actually the driver of that subscriber loss.
Right.
So, you could say, there's all these different factors, and they would have lost more money. The gaming is actually helping. But, if you're looking on the outside, you're like, I don't see how this is helping you at all. Yeah.
But, I mean, you could probably attest to that. There are other companies, other studios that are also looking at gaming as a core strategic component of their models now, right? I can totally see other streaming services thinking the same thing using their IP.
Right.
I don't know, Paramount probably is one.
Yeah, I mean, I could see. I I see the value in creating a separate thing, like creating games that you can monetize with like in-app purchases. That's totally separate. That's actually a very good game.
Line of business,
There's a whole different line of business versus just adding it to your subscription. Because the value, then you can't measure revenue. I mean, you can, but you need to make assumptions on revenue. Versus if it was a separate game, you'd know exactly what revenue you're making out of that game. And for this, you have no idea.
I wonder if if it does well, if they'll like spin it off as like it's like instead of Netflix, it would be like Netstick.
Yeah.
Like it's like its own game or something.
Yeah, I don't know. It's possible.
It's possible, like everything.
It's possible. And they have to be going for more casual subscribers because, I mean, more casual gamers because, first of all, mobile games just overall are much more casual gamers. But also, like, if you're actually like a somewhat like into games, you're not going to Netflix for your games. You're going to like Epic Games. I mean, you're going to like the actual good developers, publishers like Riot Games, or like obviously you're playing on a console or something. But Supercell,
development and design and these kinds of things that go.
Making games is really hard.
Yeah, dude.
You know, seriously. So like, you know, if you're an actual gamer who cares about the games and aren't like a mindless dummy like, you know, most grandmas in the world who for some reason still play Candy Crush, then like, you know, you're looking for games that are like studios that are actually known to make good games, like Supercell, which made like Clash of Clans, you know, and they've optimized it purely, but it's taking them decades to figure that out. Versus Netflix is jumping in.
They'll go the route that they took with Hollywood, where they'll just acquire a whole bunch of like talent from gaming studios.
Yeah. Well, Netflix has been making a lot of acquisitions in the gaming space quietly. And so, I mean, their games might be good. That's the thing, is I don't even know if it matters if the games are good or not, because I just don't think people know about them, and people just aren't thinking about it. It's also confusing.
Seers that are paying for those subscriptions, those are their parents paying.
Right. So the parents aren't playing those games for sure. There's no way anybody over the age of 25 knows that Netflix is in the games business, let alone are actually playing those games.
Yeah. So this whole gaming strategy, like just to kind of wrap it up, is just dubious at best. Right?
In my perspective, and possibly yours too, I don't know, but it's just I'd be hard pressed to think that this strategy is actually working for them.
Yeah, I think it's one of those.
Could be wrong.
Like, my opinion is that it's a single kind of brand enhancement strategy. It doesn't have like a specific ROI attached to any of these. It's just, does this help build the Netflix brand amongst Gen Zers? Right. And then you can't really put a dollar value on it, but you're kind of hoping it does give dividends.
Honestly, part of me just believes it's like business development people trying to justify their jobs. Because Netflix strategy hasn't changed. So it's like, why are you even there if you're not going to recommend new and unique stuff?
Yeah, just a whole bunch of consultants with a new go-to-market strategy.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, well, we can't just sit here and have the same strategy. We need to expand somehow. So I bet they just pitch this and like, let's do something different.
Yeah, for sure.
So I don't know. We'll see. But
let's see how it goes.
Yeah,
we'll be watching this. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a wrap for episode 16. We'll try to get more of these out, but thanks for tagging along.
It's been too soon, so no Rex this time. Go to our last episode for Rex.
There's only so much TV we can watch.
Only so much TV.
All right, man.
All right.
See you next time.
Peace, guys.